Welcome to the Coffee with Phil and Jim podcast, where two guys drink coffee and talk about stuff. And now your hosts, Phil and Jimmy Nic.
3, 2, 1. Hey listeners, this is Phil with the Coffee with Phil and Jim podcast. I have with me in the studio my co-host.
This is Jimmy Nic.
And we are planning, I guess, a good conversation today. But before we start, we'll remind everybody to search, subscribe, and share. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts app, and Spreaker app. And then you can also hit us up at coffeewithphilandjim@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Leave us your comments, reviews, all that stuff, and help us out on that as well. So, Jim Nic, what you got?
I don't know. I'm going to say here. That's how we start off our show today.
That's right, folks.
What do we got? We got a whole lot of nothing going on here today. We're going to treat you to a whole lot more.
That's right. So, it's really windy outside today.
Windy outside, real windy outside, in fact. Now, this is I kind of enjoy it. I'm all fired up about everything. I mean, what's going on in our church and everything. And then I look around and see some things out there just going on in the Christian movement within the United States itself that is really disheartening, you know. Mm-hmm. It's the things that people are voting on whether to sin against God or not, you know, basically, you know. We've become, I don't know if you could say the church in America or churches, because we're independent, local body of believers. Mm-hmm. So the movement here has become less Christ-oriented and more human. It's a human Christianity.
Right.
And to me, that is something that has to change. It's got to change because I don't want to attend a church that is not ordained of Christ, where if it's just human beings run it on their own power, I don't want to be a part of that. Nor do I want anybody to bring anybody into that, because then they're in a false church, a false religion, basically. And you got that going on out there. People are getting saved, hopefully they're getting saved, but they're being brought into a church that Christ really isn't even in it. You know, so What do we do about that? You got any ideas?
The book of Hezekiah, chapter 5:16, tells us that we should start a new denomination.
Is that what it says?
No, just kidding. There's no Hezekiah. Some of you are like looking up in your Bibles, Bible apps. Hezekiah.
I thought that was exactly right.
That's not a book in the Bible.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I tell you what, something that goes along with this conversation about what you're presenting is the change of culture. We have American culture that has affected our churches, our Christianity, and it has blinded those from actually becoming followers and not just believers. And maybe I would go as far as to say maybe in some cases not really believers. It just becomes a country club with a lot of fun stuff that you do, and it's really I see there's a lot of extremes out there. You have extremes where you're just you're again country club having fun doing all this stuff. It looks Christianese, and then you go on this other extreme where it's all about a few certain traditions that you do within your local assembly, and that really handicaps the gospel and it handicaps discipleship and what really Christ died for the intention here. So,
my question is, and if we're into this 242 church, which we're trying to develop here, which is taking time because we're having actually come out of what we've been taught and people have grown up in, is we kind of have a responsibility to those coming up into the future to get this back to where it should be. And if we don't, we're going to continue down this road, and it's going to be me, myself, and I churches all over the place like it is now. People don't come to find out what they can do for Christ or be used by Christ. They come to see what they can get from Christ.
Right.
And it's that consumer mentality, what's in it for me kind of Christianity, and that's all you see, especially on the TV, the TV pastors and everything. That's basically what you're getting there. It's all about consumer driven. What do I get out of this? And they come on TV for 30 minutes or an hour and sell a product to you. They're selling you a certain idea, and you send them money, and it's supposed to magically happen, and it don't. So something has to change. I mean, and I guess if it's going to change, it's up to us.
Yeah.
We either going to do it Christ's way, because I don't want to do it any other way. I've done it the other way, and you don't reap anything of value out of it. And why be doing something that's contrary to what we're supposed to be doing, and you're not impressing God or Christ or anybody with it. We may be impressing each other, but where is the reality of the truth in it? If there's no truth in it, and we're just going through the motions, and what do we have? I mean, what do we have as a church? If you got a whole body of believers doing that, then what do you got? Is it really the Church of Jesus Christ or what? Because obviously, if you're not making disciples or creating discipling, we'll get that. I'll get that word right.
Come on.
Discipling people and going out and evangelizing, then we're not doing what Christ told us to do. And then we're not His church if it's all based upon just us. I mean, it's supposed to be about Him. It's His church, and yet it's all turned to being about us individuals. And Christ is actually being left out of His, if it is His church, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
Is it really His church if it's all about human interests and human needs?
Well, that's the thing, is if it's human interest, human needs, it's flesh, and God says that is death. And there's so many churches out there that seem to be alive, but they're really dead. The power is not there. And so there's really not a spiritual presence like they think there is, because they have this huge calendar full of stuff that they're doing. And I'm not saying activities and stuff are bad. Don't take me wrong there, but what's the real focus? Like, the change of our culture from what it was to what is developing now towards Acts 2:42. And those that are maybe your first time tuning in, Acts 2:42, and they continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and in breaking of bread and prayers. This was first century church, and we want to see first century church in the 21st century. There's some different things that you have to look at the New Testament and see how they do it. How did God set it up to do? It can be done today, but there's such a selfishness to people, let alone believers nowadays, that it becomes all about me and what I can get out of it.
Well, don't you figure we're kind of misrepresenting Christ? I mean, we really
Almost
are.
Definitely.
I mean, we have a. We are empowered to represent Him, and if we're misrepresenting Him, of what value is that?
Yeah.
And if we're leading people to worship Him incorrect, just doing it wrong. Let's just face it.
Yeah.
We're doing it wrong. We've always been doing it wrong for the last 100 years or more, I'm not here to tell anybody about it, but, let's face it, it's not working. You look around and see what's going on. If it's not working, then the Holy Spirit can't be in it, because if the Holy Spirit's in it, it'd be working. And it's not working. So something needs to change, and it's got to be us that changes, because Christ don't change, so we change. That's the problem. We've been the problem. We've always been the problem. I mean, just like the Israelites, they were always the problem. They got in there, and they got full of it. And
Do you think that part of the holdback too is people do not know how to have relationships?
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, especially a relationship with Him. I don't know what the deal is there. I mean, to me, I didn't know about it because I didn't, really I didn't. When I first came into it, I didn't know you're supposed to have a real personal relationship with Him. I just followed the rules. I didn't know anything about it. I was pushing 30, do what the rest of them are doing. And find out what the rest of them were doing wasn't right.
Yeah.
Wasn't right,
Yeah.
So it's been a eye opener and a change for me personally, and what He has revealed to me personally through my relationship with Him, and it's grown because of it. But and that if you don't have the right relationship with him, it affects your relationship with everybody else. Mm-hmm. So if you have the right, you got to get that relationship right before your rest of your relationships even begin to really work out and get the full potential they should be.
Right. Well, yeah, your relationship with God is numero uno, and it does affect your relationship with others. And I see a whole generation of people that don't know how to have relationships.
Oh.
And they don't know how to talk to people. They don't have a conversation. They don't know how, and you can learn how to do that. I mean, that you just gotta, I guess, want to do that, but it becomes a handicap. Now, what I've noticed, especially in our culture here at our church, the more that we go towards New Testament, then it starts organically eliminating excuses of people.
Right. Because we all got a bunch of excuses.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a whole bag of them here. You want one? You got plenty. Got plenty of your own, and you need to borrow some.
That's right. Oh, we all got plenty of our own.
Got all kinds of stuff here.
Well, gosh, what's his name? The guy that writes that blog on Chill Out and Serve. What's his name?
Let's see.
ChilloutandServe.com.
Who is that guy? I think it's, let's see, him. I believe that's Travis, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Pastor Travis?
Yes, that's right. That's our pastor. He writes a blog, chilloutandserve.com. Check it out. Sign you up. Subscribe. He's got some really good content on there. It definitely challenges you if you're wanting to be a disciple. And but he posted one last month that says things that kill friendships. And he talks about the root of every bad relationship is selfishness and pride. They both produce out of a profound sense of genuine insecurity. Ooh, that's why we need that. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun. Well, I'll tell you what. What'd you get? Insecurity. Yes. That's true, though. I mean, it really is. It's true. Yeah, we're all insecure. I mean, we are. I don't care who it is. In certain things, certain areas, in people's life, at any time, you can become insecure over something. Yeah. And we tend to take that into relationships. Mm-hmm. And then I think a lot of people, I don't know if I ought to be talking about that or this or that or that or this or this. Yeah. But anyway, what I was saying is that I don't know what I'm saying, quite honestly.
Well, our insecurities that we have, a lot of that can be helped if you have these relationships, and especially in those in your church. I think there's so many churches out there that don't really know each other. We had some friends over last night for dinner that are members or co-laborers with us, and all that stuff. Come over to our house, have dinner, let the kids run around, have a good time, talk. Just have a good. We have. You have to work at it, those relationships, and maybe that's something that people don't want to work at.
Do you think it's maybe harder among Christians because of that? Because they feel like they have to keep up a certain persona there. They got to be a certain attitude and act a certain way and everything, instead of relaxing, just being yourself. And but if you got the Holy Spirit working in you, that brings about change in you, and you can, But I don't know. People get uptight over just about anything.
Yeah.
So that's true. I mean, it doesn't take much to set people off.
It's like they have to be perfect.
Yeah, they have to be perfect, like the rest of us.
Let me tell you,
man.
Don't ask my wife.
I'll tell you talk about imperfect. Whew, man.
Yeah. There's a level of perfectionist out there that they're afraid to fail, or they fear that it's going to happen, and but especially in relationships. And I guess my whole point to that is if you look in the New Testament, you see what happened, especially in Acts. They had such a koinonia, fellowship, unity
Well, that's because they had everything in common, too. That was their relationship through Christ. They were in love with Christ, just about every one of them. They died to self, took up the cross, and was following him. They walked away from family and jobs and everything else because they had to.
Yep.
I mean, because basically they were going to get thrown out anyway. If somebody wasn't going to stone them or something, That's exactly what it was. So they had an absolute need for each other. They were in love with Jesus Christ, and they died to self. And I think in America, it's not a lot of self-dying going on around.
No, not at all.
And so I should treat you the way Christ treats me, right?
Right.
So we need to understand that. How Christ has treated me, I'm supposed to treat you. And we don't do that. And so, and you got to have the freedom to be able to do that. But a lot of people get uptight about it. I don't know.
Well, in the New Testament, they did it together. Because
Yeah.
they realized that we're better together.
Yeah, that's like a thing I say on Sunday. We as a group work better together than as individuals out there separately.
Right.
Like even Christ sent them out 2 by 2. Well, but they were together as a whole church, and they worked on the evangelism together, and they went out and did it. They just didn't just stop Joe here and there. There's nothing wrong with stopping Joe here and there on the street or whatever.
Right.
But it was formulated. They prayed about it. They went and did what the Holy Spirit told them to do.
Yeah.
And they followed through on that, but they did it, collectively, and then they sent them off into groups, like Barnabas and Paul, they got sent out, and went out and did what they needed to do and followed the Holy Spirit to where they should go and what they should say and do. So.
Well, plus those are the thousands that, were in their homes daily, and there were people showing up, and that you had a bunch of believers in that.
Yeah, they were training those new ones that were that were added daily. That they were going through that and training them.
Right.
They were discipling them, making disciples of them, so they could go out. Then when the persecution did start hitting there in Jerusalem, they did go out.
Yeah.
And that made a big difference. But they were working as a group in this. It just wasn't an individual here and an individual there. It was the whole group. They're all involved in it, and it was powerful. Within 2 centuries, they had over 30-some million Christians.
Yeah.
In a very small area. In them days, travel and road and
Yeah.
a little rough getting around. And that was quite an achievement.
That's right.
So.
Tipping in donkey PCs and stuff.
Everything else, you just can't get on the highway and go down the road here.
Yeah.
Catch a bus somewhere.
Well, maybe that's something too. The modernization of everything, technology to cars or whatever, we should be using as tools to do this. Maybe we're actually loving those things more.
Oh, well, yeah, but we misuse them too.
Yeah.
We look for a lot of that stuff as just pure entertainment instead of, as you said, a tool that we could actually be using to reach people with. We take it and use it as entertainment because for some reason we've got to be entertained constantly in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, you got people jumping out of planes and jumping off bridges with a bungee cord attached to them.
Big old rubber bands.
And all kinds of things going on, just trying to entertain themselves because they're bored silly. They ain't got nothing to do. They got too much money in their pocket and they ain't got nothing to do.
Yeah.
Well, they get out here and work for Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Get saved and, do the right thing there. But anyway, whatever you want to say.
Well, we could say a lot about this. One of my main points, though, or points of discussion is we're doing it. We have to do this together. That's how God intended it to be. But to do that, you have to know each other. You have to have relationships. You have to have that unity. And the unity is not just the fact that you show up on a Sunday or Wednesday night. Unity goes way far beyond that.
Oh, yeah, it's a relationship, personal relationship with each other. I know I come out of one where, you met on Sundays, you met on Wednesdays, and if they threw beans and cornbread deal, you showed up for it,
Yeah.
But that's basically it. You might have had a friend or two in there, but most people just really doesn't socialize with each other inside the church, more or less outside the church.
Right.
Their little cliques and everything. And that's basically, so you didn't have that shared brotherhood, that fellowship with each other in there. And so we had nothing really other than Christ, which is what we should have in common, or say we had in common, but we weren't pulling together to get the message out or, see the gospel go forward or anything else.
Right.
It was, come in and get my individual needs met, come in, say hi to God and go home.
Yeah, and it makes you feel better, and it's
Oh,
and it may also get to the point where you're doing all this stuff during the week, and then Sundays you're kind of refocus day. You can always look forward to Sunday because that's the time. Well,
Get your batteries recharged.
Yeah, and it's not like that.
It's not the way it's supposed to be.
No.
And it doesn't work, and you can see the results of it in the American Christian movement. Mm-hmm. It's name it and claim it.
Well, unless there's a most sense American Christian missionary in some other countries, these countries don't do this.
Well, I mean, that's we've been talking about missionaries, and if you're exporting what you do at your church here in America to another country, and you're doing it basically what you've always been doing, then you're not helping them people out over there.
Nope.
And they're not getting the relationship with Christ they should have because they're not even being discipled, really. The guy goes over and starts a church and he stays over 30 years, and who gets discipled in it? You may have some church members, but are they disciples of Christ?
Right.
So,
And how much more could you have reached
if you had discipled them and sent them out?
That's right, and let them do their own thing. You're just teaching them. You're teaching them what God's saying through His Word and training them, and they go out and they reach those of their own people.
But they're not doing that, though. They're Americanizing the church. We've already did it because we've already figured out we're smarter than everybody else, and that's the way it goes. If it's not American, it's dumb.
Yeah.
But they got people getting dreams. In other countries, and not too many people dreaming around here.
No, I've had the privilege of going to a few different countries. I've been to Mexico a couple times. I've been to Panama. I've been to
Texas,
Thailand, Texas. That's a mission field in itself. Although I am from there, I've been able to firsthand visit some of these places and see some of these believers. And I remember we went, me and another guy went with a missionary for many, many years. And we went and they were establishing churches. Well, these churches were established through the ministries that he started decades ago by just discipling. He never started a church. He never tried to pastor a church. He just trained men. Those men reached out, trained others, evangelized, and then they ended up starting their own churches. Well, we went to one deal where some didn't have buildings, obviously. Some just maybe had something like a carport deal over their head or something. It just really didn't matter to them. But there was... Man, I want to say a couple of thousand people in a village in South Mexico that were here for this, and we brought like a box of Bibles, and man, they ate it up. It was so precious to them, and because some of them didn't even have Bibles, some of them didn't have, but. It was so awesome to be part of that and to see that. And some of the places I've been, I've talked to, they're not even quote preachers unquote. They're ministers. They're disciples, and so they're risking their life, like sneaking into jails to
supposed to sneak out of jail.
Yeah, right.
What are you doing sneaking into jail?
Exactly. It blew my mind when one guy told me that in one country, and I was like, what? And he said, he sneaks in and he trains men in there, and they're already at that point they'd already been seeing these guys that were getting trained, already reaching out to these people and training those within this prison.
Well, I don't know. I guess we could sit around probably, but what are we going to do about it? I mean, we know the problem is, what are we going to do about it?
That's a good question.
You know, we can sit here and talk about what's wrong because we all know what's wrong. It's us. Mm-hmm. And it's the selfishness of us and pride and selfishness of it. And that's what's causing the church to be what it is today. What are we going to do about it? Well, people can sit around and talk about it, and they can complain about it. But what are we going to actually do? And that takes each individual having to examine himself and re-examine yourself over and over. I'm doing it. I hope everybody else will start doing it because it's needed. We have got to change this because we're misrepresenting Jesus Christ. It's his church. It's not our church. Let's find out what he wants and how he wants it done, and quit trying to do it what way Grandma and Grandpa and everybody else did it, because it ain't working. All you got's a bunch of believers sitting in pews and doing nothing, and nobody's getting discipled, and we're being made fun of, not because of Christ, but because of us.
Yeah.
The problem is they're not looking at us and seeing Christ and getting angry. They're looking at us as a bunch of hypocrites. And we're not doing what we should be doing. And it's him. It's him. It's got to be his church. It's not mine. I just, if I'm going to be in this, I want to be in it where it's his.
Right.
I want to be a part of his church, not something a bunch of guys sit around and thought up or made up and said, well, this looks good and sounds good. It looks Christian. Let's do this. Let's meet once a week, and that's good enough,
Yeah.
Either I'm going to, I want to invest all my existence into this.
Do you think, though, that you're asking what will we do about it? And obviously, we have the answers. I believe we have the answers based upon New Testament.
I think we're working.
And we're working towards that. And it does take time because you're recovering a lot of believers and their traditions and their mindsets. So you're rewiring a lot of those things. And I know that may sound negative, but we're in a state of, this is kind of what we've always done. It's how we've done it. It's how we've understand this verse to be when they're not looking at the whole context. But obviously we have the answers to that. We're working towards that. Praise the Lord for what he's doing and how he's using us and all that stuff. But
if you know that it's not right, you're not doing it the way it should be done, and you continue to do it, what does that mean?
I think it means, and this is my opinion, but I think it means that they're scared. They're fearful. They're fearful of...
They're afraid to step out of their comfort zone or something because they've got used to this and this is the way it's done and it's easy.
Our flesh will always go to the path of least resistance. Yeah. We'll always do what's easy instead of what's right. And what's right is always going to be difficult.
Right.
You're not going to do what's right and it'll be easy. And so what's been happening for so long is they mix in with they justify the easy and misinterpret all kinds of God stuff, and then it becomes part of their culture. It becomes what they do. What I'm seeing is people also afraid of stepping out of their comfort zone, but stepping out of the comfort zone based upon what people will say about them. Not even initially do, but what they say or might think about them. We've gone through some ringers on some things, and we've had to come down to a place where it doesn't matter what Dr. Whistlebritches says. What does God say?
Right.
Let's do that.
Who are you going to impress, him or God?
Right.
It's his church. It's Christ's church, and it should be the way that he wants it. And we see the formula for it in Acts of how it actually ran and worked and prospered. Mm-hmm. Now they figure they go out and get 10, 15, 20,000 people to show up at this church building, but you're promising them the world, and that's basically what you're doing. Name it and claim it. Just throw your money up here and got to make you rich, and man, it's just going to be, you're going to have heaven on earth.
My gosh, and in Acts you see that they were doing that with all the persecution happening.
Oh yeah, and they were selling their stuff, and anybody that had a need, they met the need of each other. Right. They were doing as they had need for. They just wasn't, just out there just giving away to everybody. Yeah, we all split it up evenly. It's whoever had a need.
Right.
They helped with that. But now it's all about what can I get out of God? What can I get? Because the preacher man up there told me if I give $1,000, God's going to make me rich.
Right.
And I'm not going to get sick again, and everything's just going to be fine and dandy, and apple candy.
Apple candy. sounds good, like the old-fashioned apple
Yeah,
candy.
the old sour.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, and dang it, I forgot what I was gonna go with that. Apple candy. Man, I'm gonna have to get some apple candy and get some more of that root beer from Tulsa.
Yeah, sounds good. That sounds really good. According to Brett, I think you can get it down to a place next to down there, Stockyards, down there by Cattleman's.
Really?
He says there's a place down there that sells all that kind of pop, so they may have it down there.
Ooh, may check that out.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Get some of that.
I did when we got over at the Iron Chicken over there. That was a pretty good root beer.
Chicken. Made with pure sugar cane.
Made pure sugar cane.
At the Iron Chicken.
We call it cocaine.
That's right. Michael Cocaine? Mike Cocaine.
But anyway, let's get back to that.
Anyway, refocus.
If we're going to run it down, which we everybody runs the church down. I mean, this is broke, that's broke, everything's broke. We know it's broke. So let's start talking about solutions to this.
Mm-hmm.
We can sit around and, you got churches voting on whether they're going to sin against God. They're all man-run. It's all man-powered. Name it and claim it. The word of faith, where if you don't say it, it won't happen to you. If a doctor tells you got cancer, and as long as you don't say it, you don't have cancer. That's crazy. It's just superstition. You're living in superstition then. So instead of looking at all these here and say, okay, well, we know the problems. Let's work on the solution.
Yeah.
Let's get this right, because it's not my church, it's Christ's church. What does Jesus Christ want us to do as a church, as a body, on a daily basis, not just on Sundays, but every single day of the rest of our lives that he's got us here? Because we're only here because he wants us here. Otherwise, he would have took us out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need to quit looking at what's wrong, because we already know what's wrong, and it's us. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Basically, it is us. And the only way we're going to correct this is to listen to the Holy Spirit, do what he says to do, and take this out. Instead of coming in...
But Jimmy Nic, that's too radical.
Well, it's got to be
too radical.
I mean, they were radical in the first century.
They
they took a beating, they threw them in jail, and they come back out and went to doing what they were told not to do. I mean, come on, didn't they? That was old Peter and them, after they'd run and hid off when they were executing Jesus,
right.
And then they're out there, they get a beating, and they go throw them in jail, they get out, and they go right back to doing what they told them not to do.
Yeah.
And that was to preach the gospel. And so, yeah, they got radical about it. Got to get radical about it.
But we cannot even tell our neighbor about it.
We can't kiss the world's butt and expect this to work.
Ding, ding, ding. You said it right there. We as believers, we live a double life. And what the Bible tells us is we are unstable in all our ways. And we have a lot of instability in Christianity, in believers, therefore churches. And it's full of selfishness, full of pride, it's full of fear, it's full of these things that are not Christ.
Yeah, they're not Christ, and part of the problem is now where they're inviting the world into the church and everything, because we don't want them to think bad of us or anything. So what have they been doing the last 50, 60 years in this country? They've been brown-nosing the world. That's all they've been doing, bringing it in here, letting the world come on in here, tell us what to believe, what not to believe. But, you don't love me if you don't allow me to sin against God in this way or that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just plain stupid. If they're sinning, it's something direct like that, we should call them out every time. And if they're not willing to repent and change from it, they got to go. Mm-hmm. You can't have them in there. Christ wouldn't have them in there.
See, and that's the thing. You look how did Christ handle all that stuff? How did Christ handle the woman at the well? Yeah. How and the sin that was going there? How did he handle these things? He obviously spoke truth in love. He spoke truth. He stuck to his truth, but he reasoned with them. It was almost like he helped them understand, get them to that point where they understand where they're at and all that stuff. But again, there's not these conversations aren't happening. On top of, there's so many believers in churches that are accepting all this sin, whatever that sin is.
Yeah, because they've been told, well, we don't want them not to like us.
Right.
You know,
It's like,
and if you read the scriptures, they're supposed to not to like us. The world's not, but they're
That's
not
right.
our buddies.
if you live godly, you shall suffer persecution.
We're not supposed to be buddies with the world. We're supposed to lead them to Christ, but we're not to be their best buddy, you know, and say, oh, well, come on in. I'm sure, you know, when you get to when it's over with and you come in before Christ, you know, because you were here in church and because he loves you, I'm sure he'll let that pass. You know, that is just plain stupid.
Yeah.
You know, or they try to rewrite the Bible and turn things into their own way of, you know,
Yeah.
defining what the message is there, and it's pure craziness. And I guess he's either doing what he said he was doing in Romans 1. He's turning them over to the that mind, you know,
Yeah.
the brave mind, and we may be at the end of this thing real quick here.
It just seems more and more like the end is near because of you see what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah, but we're all alive right now, and as long as we got breath in us, we should be trying to get this the way Christ wants it.
Right.
Plain and simple. I mean, you got to die to self. Like he said in his blog today, you know, die to self, take up your cross, follow him. If you got to walk away from family, you'll have to walk away from it, but you got to be committed to Christ 100%. You know, you can't be 50% of this or 50% of that. It's a double-mindedness. And what happens to a double-minded man? What does it say about double-minded man?
Unstable. In
Unstable.
all his ways.
Yeah. And so we've got to get to that point to where it don't matter what other people think. It's what Christ think.
Right.
When we get to the point where it's just what Christ thinks, and you know the rest of them go do what they want to do.
Right.
If they just want to meet on Sunday and Wednesday nights and sing a few songs, collect a few dollars, put a few money in the pot to send to some missionaries somewhere, and feel that they've achieved what Christ wants them to achieve, you know, go for it. If that's what you want, do that. If you don't want to do that, if you want to do it Christ's way, if you want to do the 242 way, then let's get involved with it and let's have a discussion. Let's talk about this and put this into action. But if they want to just go on doing what they've always done, what Grandma and Grandpa did, good, go ahead and do it. But we're not going to do it that way. And that's what I understand that our pastor isn't going to do it that way anymore either.
That's
He's
right.
not going to play church, and I don't want to play it.
No, I don't want to play church anymore. I think because...
Wasted too much time doing it already. So.
Right. A bunch of posers out there. I swear.
Yeah, well, I was one of them. You know, I got
was
caught
too.
up into it. I mean, you know, it's real easy to get caught up in it. And man, when it gets easy, it gets easy. You know,
Yeah.
hey, this is, you know, you just slide right through this. You
Yeah.
know?
And church can be just a tack onto your life. And if you don't want to do it week, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to do that, hey, whatever.
I said, I hadn't talked to God in, let's see, 6 months. I guess I better go check in down there at the church house down there this week.
Yeah. Or something really bad happens, and you're like,
Oh, all of a
I'll
sudden.
just pray. Oh,
Oh, Lord, I'll be there every Sunday.
yeah, that's right. It's like,
Well, he's going to say, well, okay, but what about the other 6 days of the week?
yeah, that's right.
You know?
That's right.
That's truthful than that. I mean, I'll be there every Sunday. Well, what about the other 6 days of the week?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, but that's the way it's got to happen, and we can't just, you know, just sit there and be cowards about it. It's basically it's his, and if we die, so what? That was Paul's whole deal. Paul realized when he's talking in Philippians there about rejoicing and all this, everything Paul needed, he realized that everything he needed to exist, period, was in Christ Jesus. Period. He didn't need nothing else. If he had Christ, he had everything. And we need to get to that reality.
Yeah.
That's it. If you got Christ, you got everything, because everything belongs to him to start with.
Right.
And life itself is his. And so it's all him. You get all in on him, and it will start changing your attitudes. And, you know, so what if, you know, like I said, so what if I die? You know, to live is Christ, to die is gain. You know, only reason I'm sticking around here because it's for your benefit, which we were talking about last night. That, yeah, what he did to benefit those people in those churches is benefiting us today.
That's right.
So this is, look how it's 2,000 years ago, and look, we're benefiting from what he did and went through 2,000 years ago. Is anybody going to benefit from what we're doing today?
Oh, man. Do you have a dun dun dun?
Yeah, really, you know.
Because that's
Is anybody going to benefit at this church or any other church here in this town or throughout the United States? Is anybody 100 years from now going to benefit from our being?
right, and benefit, and not leave this incredible legacy of, oh, that person was such a great Christian. No. Let's see the fruit. Let's see the disciples. Let's see the multiplication.
Let's see Christ.
That's
It's
right.
all about Christ. They're going to benefit from this, where the multiplication was so great that it reached them.
Mm-hmm.
That Christ, was preached. That the gospel was preached, and that it went out. It ain't about me. It ain't about you. But are we going to do to where 100 years from now people will benefit from it, and they'll never know our name? And that's what's important.
Right, and it doesn't amount to just. It just doesn't amount just to Sundays.
Yeah, it's 7 days a week kind of deal here.
And if you look at the New Testament, and if you look at the absolute essential elements for the New Testament church, you see a church that ended up turning the world upside down. And this church, their priority, they had equal priority, and the priority for a New Testament church. And so what they do is teaching, joint participation, deep friendships, and prayer.
Right.
And because of that, they worked together. They did this, and it wasn't.
So see, that's another thing that gets me. That's what's kind of sad about all this. We're talking about that. Well, this is what they did in the first century. Mm-hmm. The sad part is what we're not doing now. We shouldn't even be having this discussion about what they did. It should be the discussion of what we're doing as they were doing.
Right.
And we're not doing it. And so that's the sad part. It stopped. So, like I said, we're not doing what they did. So we're talking about it in the past. And, and it should be in the present. And it's not. And that's sad. It's really sad because we've really let Christ down. He deserves better. A whole lot better.
Yeah.
And, we got to get ourselves out of this.
We owe him everything.
Yeah, we got to get ourselves out of here, out of this, and he's got to be number one in it, or else, I don't know. It just...
Well, I think it was your turn to leave on a depressing note.
I ain't all depressed. I'm looking forward to the fact that Christ has got this, and if he wants it, it's going to happen. And... it's not. You can't stop it. But the question is, are we going to get involved with it? Are we going to be on board with it?
Right.
Are we going to be a part of the solution, or are we going to continue to be part of the problem? If all you can do, even as a pastor out there, if all you're going to do is, walk, boot and toe to what everybody in that congregation's doing, when the right thing to do is to do the 242, which is basically get back to being the church of Jesus Christ. Let him run his own church, and people quit running it for him.
Right.
It's his church. He said, I'll build it. He didn't say, Jim Nic will build it. No, I ain't going to build it. It's not my church. It's his. So,
Right.
with that there, I give you one of these. And that's what I think.
That's right. Oh, goodness. That's fantastic. Well, I think we've talked a lot about all kinds of stuff, but
you got me all worked up here.
Yeah.
You got me all cranky now,
And I was like, oh. But I think it's a great thing to get out there and talk about. Listeners, I'm sure you're probably dealing with some of this stuff. Maybe you're questioning some of this stuff. We have answers to this. If you wonder why 242, if you wonder why they're talking about this, or maybe you're thinking, oh, well, that's not what I believe discipleship to be, or that's not what I think the church should be.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Email us, coffeewithphilandjim@gmail.com. Search us up, subscribe, and share on Facebook, YouTube, Spreaker app, and the Apple Podcast app. And let us know what you got.
Yeah, let us know. We're interested in what you got to say. Now, we may send Benny the enforcer by, but we to get you straightened out. But
bust some kneecaps.
Yeah, bust some kneecaps here till you come around our way of thinking. Just a kidding, folks. Just a kidding. Not.
That's awesome.
But anyway, we about ready to get out of here?
Yeah, I think so.
I forgot where I was at here. Hold on, I got you a song here today. This guy here was actually from, you ever heard of, what's that place down here in Texas called? Let's see what it is. I don't know what it is. Paulo something.
Paulo?
First part of it, Paulo. P-A-L-O.
Paulo Pinto?
Paulo Pinto.
Yes.
That's it. You ever heard of Paulo Pinto?
Yeah, I've been there.
This guy, Steve Tyrell, was from there. And here's a little song, a ditty to get us out of here today. Let's play this here.
Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep and just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear the pitter pat? Yeah, that happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with my blues on parade, but now I'm not afraid, 'cause this rover has crossed over. If I never have a cent, I'll be rich as Rockefeller. There be gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street.
All right.
All right, on the sunny side of the street.
All right. Now we're talking some Jesus here.
That's
Yes.
right.
Let's get some Jesus talking going around here.
All right, well, thanks for listening, guys. This is Phil.
And this is Poncho Jim.
Until next time.
Adios.